Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Psychic medium Helene Olson and paranormal researcher Patricia Baker. Here are Supernatural Girls.
Welcome to another episode of Supernatural Girls. You can find us at supernaturalgirls.com. Please go on over and sign up for the fabulous newsletter that my partner Patricia Baker puts out each and every week. We're also planning some great fall giveaways, so be sure to get your name on the newsletter list. That's the only way you can win a book or a reading. And we'd love it if the audience would call in at 646-478-0828. Today is September 7th, 2013, and hello, Patricia. That time has gone so quickly, I'm already thinking about Christmas. How's that?
Oh, my God, don't even say that word yet. It just needs to be further away. I know, I couldn't believe it. You know, when I turned around today and looked at the weather, it felt like fall, and summer has gone, so.
It looked
another
like fall.
summer has passed.
Like fall. Yeah, all gone.
I know.
But autumn is so much fun, though.
I love autumn. It's one of my favorite seasons, and I hope we have a nice one with beautiful foliage here in New England. It would be a nice treat to have that, and hopefully the rain will stay away so we can have beautiful leaves.
Yeah, well, last year the fall foliage was truly spectacular. That's what I thought.
It was.
It was better than it had been for a few years, so that was really nice to see. So we're hoping for this year as well. But I don't know. We had a mild winter, so who knows?
You never know. Things are changing. So extremes of weather, I mean, it seems like we can only expect more of that. So, we're going to have to hold tight and see what happens.
Yeah, I think the Farmer's Almanac is predicting a bad winter.
Well, you know what I do? I look at the caterpillars. And if the caterpillars are big, fuzzy, fat caterpillars, then I know we're going to have a bad winter. But
so what did you see?
I have seen very kind of skinny ones. So I don't think we're going to have a bad winter. I really don't. I think we're going to have maybe an average winter or a mild winter, or a combination thereof. But when I see the big fat ones, that's when I know we got to look out. It's going to be a wicked winter, but I haven't seen fat ones, so I'm going to go with average.
Great
to mild.
news. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I know what Mother Nature has up her sleeves, but
well, the caterpillars have been an accurate predictor, so I'm sticking with that.
Great. Good. Fantastic. Well, tonight we have a fabulous guest, and her name is Dr. And she is an MD, Dr. Cynthia Koelker. Am I pronouncing her name properly?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And she wrote the book, Armageddon Medicine, which I have read, and you have read, Patricia. And the tagline on that is, How to Be Your Own Doctor in 2012 and Beyond. I was really taken with the book.
Me too. I mean, this is a book that we all need to read, and it is the only book of its kind, because in all this prepper stuff, I have never seen a book that covers this type of information, what we need to know ahead of time and what we need to know if, everything hits the fan. So Dr. Koelker has done us a tremendous service in putting this all down on paper, and I can't wait to talk to her. And, of course, with the paranormal news, what I'm looking at is everything that's being talked about in the news right now, which points to the possibility that we really do, unfortunately, need to get ready for something, whether it's the Syrian episode and where that could lead us, There have been all kinds of earthquakes that have been taking place that seem to be ramping up, one most recently in Guatemala, 6.5. And it's Fukushima is not looking good, so we have radiation concerns there.
Yeah, not looking good there.
It's sometimes when you hear all these news reports, at least for me, it feels like we're getting hit from a lot of different sides. So being prepared is essential. And it's not just about collecting food and water, but it's about knowing what to do when you have a medical emergency and knowing how to be prepared for that medical emergency. So this is a critical issue, and I've been telling everybody you need to come and listen to the show tonight because you're going to want to survive. You're going to want to know what to do. And there are things you can do now, which I know Dr. Koelker is going to talk to us about. So I don't know. Are you ready for a disaster? I don't feel like I am, even though I know I talk about being ready. I feel like I'm ready.
Well, here's the thing with me. I prefer not to live in the thought of catastrophe, and I feel like I'm prepared enough for several weeks. But beyond that, it kind of becomes sort of a conundrum. How much is really enough? And I know that at least here, where I am on the coast, occasionally the water main goes out, or we have a northeaster, or there's an issue where we're stuck actually at our house for a couple of days. So I feel like at the very least, if you're not prepping for catastrophe, it's always necessary to be prepared. And I know that a couple of years ago we had a huge water main go out from a big reservoir far from here, and every single store was wiped out of water in like 5 minutes. And there was one news article about a fight that broke out in one of the stores that was kind of serious. And so that's really just a glimpse of what can happen if you're not prepared. And, we didn't have any water for a couple days that time. And, it's a scary thought, but I think if you empower yourself with being ready for something, at least you're not in that emergency mode second one. You can take a breather and step back from the chaos and the crowds and just be with yourself and make a plan from that point. But, boy, I'll tell you, when you start getting into prepping and surviving a major cataclysm, it's a scary process. It's a scary thought.
Well, I think it's scarier not to be prepared, and that's why I'm so glad to have the good doctor on tonight, because again, it's all about getting the right information and then making informed decisions on how much you want to store for food, for water, and medical supplies. How much do you want to get involved in it? But first you have to have the great information so that you know what kinds of things you should have on hand.
Yeah, I didn't mean to tell people they should be scared. I think that her book is so well written, so clear and so concise, that you can feel truly hopeful and empowered in maintaining yourself and not getting into deep depression or having, real serious issues immediately from anything that comes along. And I thought that all the information in her book was really clear.
It's very clear. It's a great read. Believe it or not, it's a very substantial book, and it's worth the investment of time and money to have this and have it with you so that you can refer to it. It's a great reference book, and it's also a great read. I found it fascinating. A lot of the issues that were brought up I didn't even think about. But anyways, we need to get the good doctor on the show because we
sure
are talking about her. She's waiting to come on.
The name of her book is Armageddon Medicine, How to Be Your Own Doctor in 2012 and Beyond. And we welcome Dr. Cindy. You're live on the air.
Good evening. Good to talk to you both.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great book.
My pleasure.
It's a great book. Can you tell us a little bit more about you? Because I know you've had extensive training, and you. It looks like you worked your own way through medical school, which is an accomplishment in and of itself.
Well, I don't know anybody who held a job during medical school, but the National Health Service Corps, which still exists, paid my way, and I had to go to work in Appalachia for 3 years to put my service back to them, and that was a good experience. And didn't come out owing as much as the people do nowadays.
Good for you. And so what made you write this book?
Well, the book was kind of a response to interest on the part of my readers and some listeners, because I had started writing online some articles about medical preparedness, and at least the people reading, this was in 2012, no, that was 2011, they wanted more and more and more information, so I started my own blog called Armageddon Medicine, and then a lot of people wanted more information, so I wrote the book, and then those who wanted even more information, I started with classes. So it's been really interesting to meet the people who come to my classes and what they're doing and how much medical preparation is going on across the country.
So are you surprised by that, how many people are interested in this subject?
Well, yes, and the types of people are quite interesting. I would say about a third of them are medical-oriented, like some nurses, paramedics, the respiratory therapists, psychologists, so medical kind of people. And then about a third are some sort of crisis responder. I've had some missionaries and also disaster responders. And then the other third, they're just any sort of person who's interested. A lot of them with no medical background. So, and this is kind of out of the mainstream, too, because I would not say that the mainstream medical establishment that I know of outside the government is really preparing for too much of anything. So this is personal preparedness.
And it's wonderful that you're offering this because, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this is the only book of its kind. So I really recommend this highly, that everybody should have this book. You know, whether there's going to be, God forbid, a big disaster or not, this is the kind of thing that you would need to know no matter what. I mean, I live out in the middle of nowhere, for example. I'm in a very rural area and very far away from hospitals, and if ever needed an ambulance, it would take a long time for them to get here. So your book provides valuable information even for people like me who are not in a city or close to medical services. So it's a book to have no matter what.
It's really for the independent-minded person who wants to think for themselves. It's also from the point of view that there isn't really medical backup really handy. And I'd say that is the biggest difference between my book, Armageddon Medicine, and all the other medical books out there. All the others pretty much assume that there is backup. And I specifically address questions, well, what if there isn't? And
that's right. Yeah.
And you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're the doctor.
Right. Yeah, and what I'm concerned about is that you're actually saying that the medical community, hospitals, private doctors, whatever, are not preparing or prepping for any kind of major catastrophe.
Well, I would pretty much say they're not. You know, the government does have stockpiles here and there. I don't know where they are. I don't think the doctors that I know where they are, so I guess they're stockpiles, but how to get them to the people, that'd be another question. And I live in Akron, Ohio. Depends on your point of view whether it's a medium or a small town, 300,000, let's say, or a little less than that. But I've talked to some of the disaster preparedness people here, and I don't think our town is prepared.
Really? That's kind of scary because that's a good-sized town, and to think that they're not prepared, my goodness. What does that mean for everybody else?
I think there's some chance that the bigger the town, the less prepared it is.
Really?
Well, you know, they have maybe lots of emergency responders, but as far as food, water, I heard you talking about water.
Yeah.
You know, if you're living in a high-rise, do you have the same fallback as a person living on a farm? Probably not.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the concerns that I know a lot of my friends have who live in a city is, you know, where do they go? I know we talk about bugging out and all of that,
right.
But I've also heard a lot of people in rural areas like where I live that say, don't come here. We don't want you.
Yeah, that's true, too. In Ohio, you can't really get you can't get 4 hours away from anywhere. You can't get really in the middle of nowhere. You can get an hour from a city, I guess. Not 4 hours.
No, not at all. And I watched the show, that they have on about preppers and the castle preppers and all this, and I find it fascinating. How people really are. A lot of people are trying to prepare for the worst, but it's not easy. There are so many different things to think about between food, water, security, but now here you're going to tell us all about medical. So how do we get ready? What are some of the basics that people need to know?
Yes. Well, I'll tell you the basics that people want to know, and then what they need to know. People,
okay.
like people who come to my classes, what they want to know is how to sew someone up, how to do like little minor surgeries, and how to treat infections, which I do think is important, how to put on casts, which maybe is important, but I think the more important thing is to have some understanding of medicine and to not be afraid to jump into it yourself. Because a lot of people, they say, oh, I've got a problem, go to the doctor, as opposed to, oh, I've got a problem, let me think about it, and let me see what information I have and what I can do about it. And it can't, what you said, too much to do, too much preparation, where do you start? That is true. But you just have to start somewhere with something. And you both sound...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You both sound young and healthy. I don't know if that's the case, but you sound like you are.
Oh, thank you.
I hope that you are.
We love hearing that.
Young is debatable.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me say, I don't think I get to qualify for young anymore. I think I'm in the middle-age department, and I have a grandchild, so that makes me, at least 15 plus 15 plus 15.
Yeah,
right?
That's
maybe.
But we are all young-minded. We're very young-minded, and we're proactive. And you bring up a very interesting point about independent-minded people are the ones that are going to be interested in this, and the ones that do want knowledge, and the ones that do want to understand medicine. These are the people I would imagine that are attracted to this entire subject, and especially your book, because for so long medicine has been owned by the AMA. So, you're really challenging that in some ways with this book, which I love, I absolutely love.
If I was careful in the book to tell what the current medical establishment treatment is, but then to get beyond that to what you can do yourself, because really you could say some of that's not legal. In some of my classes, I have one of my sisters who's a lawyer come in and talk to people. Like, I teach them things, and my book's called How to Be Your Own Doctor. Well, you can legally be your own doctor, but you can't legally be somebody else's doctor. But that's, if current law is in existence. And, what she tells people is, if the law is in effect, you have to follow the law. But if the law isn't in effect, are you going to let the person in front of you bleed to death? If you have the knowledge to do something, are you not going to do it because there's a law and because somebody else could take care of it, but they're not there? And so, I don't know, there's a certain tension there, and that hopefully the information that I give is something most people never need.
And that's what I love about your quote here that you put in the beginning of your book, and I just think it's great what you said. This book is dedicated to my children and grandchildren with the hope that they never need to use it. I mean, that's the truth.
Yes. And, speaking of generations here, this is what I found after teaching classes for a couple of years. It is primarily the people who are, let's just say, middle-aged, who are interested. The younger people are mostly busy with their families and with their careers, and they also don't want to think the end is coming. And then the older people beyond some age, I don't know what age, depends on their health too, they feel like they can't do anything. So it's the people who have a little extra time, a little extra money, and have seen enough of the world to know that, no, it just might not always be good here in America. There could be a change coming.
It very well could be, and could come from any side. And so, yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it's just pick something. It could be any one of a number of things right now.
Right.
So but what I love too about your book is you've addressed just about everything, and even mental illness is in here. You address that as well, and so again, let's talk about first the basics. So when you are giving a class on this and you're telling people what they need to have on hand, what are some of the supplies that you recommend to people?
Okay. Well, first of all, I advise people to take stock of who they are and where they are. For example, if you're diabetic, you need certain supplies, and if you're 20 years old and you might be having children, you need certain supplies for that. So it's not the same for everybody, but still there are basics that everybody should have. For example, in the book I list a whole series of over-the-counter medicines that are not expensive, that people should have on hand, and that can treat an amazing array of things. I think I'm getting old because a lot of the stuff over the counter was prescription when I started medicine. And it's amazing what you can get over the counter. But
yeah.
and I go to some length in the book to explain that because I see patients every day, except not today, but I see patients every day, and they just don't understand what is even available. Like, for example, a lot of people think Tums and Pepcid and Prilosec are all basically the same thing, and they all work the same, and that is just not really true at all. And so
all of these that we consider to be antacids, but they're not all the same. So how are they different? And explain that to us.
Yeah. Well, antacids are one thing to have on hand, and that would be like Tums or Rolaids, Mylanta, and they counteract acid on contact. That is a chemical reaction, and the acid combines to make a salt. And anyway, there is no more acid, and that can happen immediately, but it's short-acting. So that's one class. And then another one that some people call antacids, the class that Pepcid is in, and Zantac is in, and Tagamet and Axid. I think I got them all. And those are all over the counter now. When those first came out, they were like miracle drugs and were saving lives, that people were having bleeding ulcers and could have bled to death. But now you can get them over the counter. Anyway.
And what's the difference? Now, these are longer acting, or these are actually preventatives? What are they?
Well, they're kind of a combination of those things. They're a lot longer acting. Like a lot of them, one dose a day is enough. Most of them, once a day is enough, maybe twice a day. And they're not neutralizing acid. They are preventing your stomach from making acid by blocking the acid production. And so they can be used preventively to prevent acid production. And then if you maybe have too much acid, they can slow it down. But this is how I view them. Well, and before that, let me just say the other class is proton pump inhibitors, like the purple pill. Now, that was a great marketing campaign. I bet you all heard of the purple pill.
Yes.
So the purple pill was Nexium, and then Prilosec was the first one in that group. So in that group, there's Prilosec, Prevacid, Nexium, Protonix, Acifex, and I might be missing one. And of those, only Prilosec and Prevacid, those are the two that are over the counter. But those are like super acid reducers. Those cut down about 90% of the acid the stomach makes. And since those came out, they really came out as life-saving drugs to start with, so that people whose stomach acid was burning a hole in them, that would not happen. But now you see them over the counter, and people say, "Oh, I'm going to eat a pizza, so I'll take a Prilosec." So that it'd be better not to eat the pizza. But this is America.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think I always see these commercials on television, that when your food, fights back, then you need to take this pill. And I'm like, maybe you shouldn't be eating that food.
Yeah.
Anybody think about that?
Yeah.
What are you eating it for? Your body's saying to you, you can't digest this properly. It's reacting badly. And so, but we're just going to take a pill. Just like you said, we're in America, so take a pill.
Right.
But what a bad idea, in my opinion, that is. So.
But I am saying that you should have some pills on hand. And, these over-the-counter medicines that we were talking about, you could divide them up into, like, systems, for example, respiratory system, GI system, which is we're talking about now, urinary system, musculoskeletal system, and, let's say, mental health. Put that in there, too. So it's good to have something on hand, at least for symptoms that you would have. Like, let me just throw it back to you. What symptom would you be afraid of having that maybe you'd like to have something on hand for?
Well, do you want to take that one, Helene?
I'm thinking. What symptom? Well, I'm not going to go to a symptom. I guess I'm going to go to something as common as high blood pressure.
Okay. Now, that's a good one. Over-the-counter options for high blood pressure, there aren't many, but there are some mild water pills. Lots of people take diuretics for high blood pressure, as well as swelling, water retention, and you see ads for premenstrual bloating, that kind of thing. So there are mild diuretics over the counter. You could just ask your pharmacist what they have there. And so if you have high blood pressure, I would say get some of that. And beyond that, so that's like step one. I kind of view in the Armageddon medicine book transitional steps, like from medicine the way it is to an interim point when we still have leftover medicine, say, and then eventually down the road where maybe we run out of everything. So down the road, you'd want to find an effective herbal diuretic that you could treat, say, high blood pressure with. And there are a number of them. Here's the problem with that. If you try to find a doctor who's really knowledgeable about it, you're going to have trouble. But doctors are very experienced in treating high blood pressure. If you go to an herbalist or alternative care provider, they may have more head knowledge that, okay, this says corn silk, for example. The long hairs, the silk from a corn, can be used as a diuretic, and that has at least some evidence behind it. But I have never talked to somebody who's actually done it, not an herbalist and not a doctor and not somebody who comes to my classes and not anybody. So, how well does it really work? I would suggest, if you have high blood pressure, to learn how to do that now. At least in Ohio, we've got 10 million ears of corn here. And you ought to be able to find a lifetime supply of corn silk.
And this is again going back to what you said previously. You really do need to take stock of yourself. You have to know what your own health issues are, what you are likely to encounter based on past experience, and stock up. So let's say, for example, if you know you have a problem with acid reflux, then you stock up on that particular type of over-the-counter medicine that would give you relief. And as Helene said, for high blood pressure, what you're suggesting is try things now that are natural or over-the-counter diuretics. I never knew diuretics could work for high blood pressure. That's fascinating. So,
they often prescribe them. They often prescribe them if you have not too much high blood pressure. They'll try a diuretic first, or they will prescribe them in conjunction with other medicines. But my dad has enormously horrible hypertension, and I guess that if you have a medical condition that's that serious, then you really need to take a hard look at what you're going to do about it later. And one of the things in your book was about, piling up these medicines and how difficult it is to get extra supply. In other words, on a prescription drug for hypertension, we wouldn't be able to get a year's supply of that, would we?
And that is an excellent question. Actually, the very first article I wrote on the whole topic was how to get your doctor to give you more medicine. to help you prepare. And the main thing is that it boils down to your relationship with your doctor. Mm-hmm. If you're just in what we might call a doc in a box, somebody that you have no relationship with, that's not going to happen. But
right.
if you have a family doctor, and I'm a family doctor, there could be an internist, could be other sort of doctor, but if you have a doctor that you have some sort of relationship, they're way more likely to help you. And if you think about it, if your doctor thought that something, say, bad was going to come, that communication would be disrupted for a year, they would be doing everything they could to help you. So it would be nice to convince your doctor that something could happen, but even if you can't do that, it is a legitimate question to ask your doctor, like, say, Superstorm Sandy, okay, that came to the East Coast, so people remembered that, and you could say to your doctor, well, I would like to have an extra 3 months of medicine on hand in case of a hurricane or a storm or power out or whatever it is. And if they're not controlled drugs, your doctor, I think a whole lot of doctors would comply with that. So the first, that's only the first obstacle, though. First obstacle is getting your doctor to write the prescription. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Second obstacle is, in some cases, getting the medicine, because your insurance is not going to pay for extra medicine. Mm-hmm. So you have to pay for it. And so sometimes that's a matter of cost. Now, I know I wrote that other book, 101 Ways to Save Money on Healthcare, so I'm always thinking of ways to save money on healthcare, but you don't have to have the latest and best most of the time. Most people can have generic drugs. So if it would cost you an extra, let's say, even if you're on 3 different medicines, if it would cost you an extra $30 to get an extra 3 medicines for an extra 3 months, that seems like kind of a small price to pay to be prepared.
It is, but my dad goes to a doctor who he has a relationship with, but the doctor is at a major hospital instead of a private practice. Does that make a difference in how they'd prescribe or try to help you?
And I'm glad you asked that question, because it's that can be an obstacle. I had one guy, I think he was I think he came to my classes. I can't quite remember, but he was all set. His doctor was all on board, saying, "Yeah, that's a good idea to have this at home, and I'm going to trust you to, keep coming to your appointments, and then you'll just have it as a backup." And he was ready to do it. But he was in one of these larger groups, and the practice manager just said, "No, we're not going to get into that." And that really seems highly unfair. I'm also always telling my patients to be honest. So we don't want you lying to your doctor. But if you have patients who are missionaries, I have some patients who are missionaries. If someone came to me and said, okay, I'm going to Romania, I do have patients who are missionaries in Romania, and they wanted medicine for a year of various kinds, I surely would give it to them. And I even think that doctors at hospitals and medical centers, I think they would do that. Because they know that, okay, a missionary going to Africa or Romania or wherever, they're not likely to have the care. And Americans have a higher level of medical understanding than people in some other countries. And the doctor would probably trust the patient to know what to do better than they might trust whatever they would encounter there. So you'd think we could do that in our own country.
Yes, exactly. And when you are able to get these medicines, the outdates on them, I've heard conflicting reports about the outdates and if they're real or if you can actually use the medicine beyond the date that's listed. Yeah,
and that's another excellent question with some political controversy attached. Like, for example, I don't give my patients outdated medicine. On the other hand, if it's something like samples, I don't give them outdated samples. But on the other hand, if it's something my family could use, or I would use, I would take it home and use it. Like, let's just say Prevacid, one of those stomach medicines we were talking about. And you can get over the counter too. If I had samples of that were outdated, I would take it home, and I'll say I personally have taken medicines that was years beyond the expiration date. But there was a study that was done. It was related back to 9/11, which is coming up shortly, where, you know, we had the bioterrorism after that with anthrax and that, and the government stockpiled a lot of antibiotics and other medical supplies. And then after a few years, they outdated. And then what do? Do you throw them all away? You know, billions of dollars? Mm-hmm. Well, they did a study called a shelf, I can't think the exact name, shelf life extension study, something like that. Anyway, where they actually looked at the medicines quite a while after their expiration dates. Mm-hmm. And pretty much all of them were fine. Certainly the pills.
Really?
The liquids are a little bit more iffy, which you could imagine if you just look in your own refrigerator that some liquids might be contaminated or something if you've opened it. But as far as pills go, they were at least months to years okay. And the other thing is you need to understand what an expiration date even is. It's not really an expiration date. It's the date or the length of period of time that they've studied the drug and know that it's stable for. So you could study it for 36 months. Well, what about 37 months? Does it suddenly go bad at 37 months? Well, they just didn't study it. So you don't know. So they can only verify what they've studied.
Oh, this is so fascinating. Okay.
I have another related question to this. What is your opinion? What is your opinion of ordering these prescription drugs on the internet from foreign countries, and especially I think there are some pharmacies in Canada who do this sort of thing?
Well, the pharmacies in Canada, you know, theoretically, it's illegal for Americans to be sending away for prescriptions to Canada. However, I don't think anybody's patrolling that. So I'm not that concerned about that. I have patients who do get their medicines from Canada, brand name medicines primarily. Now, sending away to some other country, well, that raises a few questions.
I suppose you're taking a chance on China, right?
I think so, but speaking of China and India, that's where a lot of our generics are already made. So we're getting our medicine from there already, so if you go online and you think you can buy that, maybe it's fine, maybe it's not. I wouldn't advise that. I would say better to talk to your doctor. I haven't ordered any of those overseas medicines, though I've thought about it. For example, I found online, you ever hear of the antibiotic Levaquin?
Yes.
It's like a super strong Cipro, which most people have heard of.
Oh.
Well, I was looking online. Okay, you can buy a pound of it for, I don't know, $10 or $50, but a pound. Okay, or really a kilogram. So how long would a kilogram last? A long, long time. And it might be the exact same medicine that you get in your pills. I just don't know.
How would you ever be sure?
Yeah, how would you? I don't know. I mean, if you really, really got into it, you could perhaps follow the chain back. And I'm not saying that drug is from China, but you could follow the chain back and maybe. But I think it's a really complicated thing to do. I don't know how to do it, and so I'm not telling anybody to do that.
Well, we have a question online from someone wanting to know something about epilepsy. Okay.
Is that the whole question?
Yeah, is what can you do to prepare for epilepsy?
Yeah. Well, of course, there's different kinds of epilepsy, and there's different drugs. The newer drugs are expensive. The older drugs are cheap. The newer drugs may have fewer side effects, which is why doctors use them, but the older drugs. Okay, so they're in the class of medicine, at least some of them, that you might be able to get for $4 a month. So I, for sure, would ask a doctor for a long-term supply and maybe again, it boils down to relationship, because if you have a good relationship, every time you go in, your doctor might give you an extra, say, 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is to look at things that could modify your risk of having seizures, because everybody here can have a seizure given enough trauma, say your blood sugar is low enough, or say you get hit in the head or whatever. Anybody could have a seizure, but there are certain risk factors that we know. For example, alcohol use would lower your seizure threshold in a lot of patients. So you would, if you think, okay, I'll take my medicine so I can drink now and then, which is not a good idea either, but you wouldn't want to do that. Or sleep deprivation. That's a simple thing. You've probably been up half the night and thought, I can't think straight. Okay, the brain's not functioning well, so you'd want to do everything you could to lower it. And then the other part of epilepsy is, and of course in epilepsy there's different kinds of seizures. I assume they may be talking about the grand mal.
Well, this thing, someone takes Dilantin.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of seizure that would be for, but there are many types. Yeah, many
right.
Kinds.
And, with Dilantin we normally do blood levels, and we do checks on blood count and liver tests, so that would not really be available. There are alternative medicines, like one kind of anti-epileptic drug is good for this seizure and another one is best for that, but there is some crossover there, so you might be able to get a drug. I would really talk to the doctor again and say, I'm very concerned, and what can I get? Now, I have not looked into any, say, herbal anti-seizure medicines. There might be something, but I'm not aware of it.
Well, really what you're saying is one way to look at it is to do the preventative care if it comes to, which you're doing it anyway, but if you're in a crisis mode, to look at the preventative care first and now do the research to find out what kind of crossover medicine or what related older form of the medicine might be available to have on hand in case there's an emergency, I guess.
Right. And then also you'd want your family or friends to be trained to know what to do if you have a seizure. Most seizures don't kill anybody, okay? Repeated seizures could cause brain damage, but for the most part, if somebody has an occasional seizure, for the most part, it doesn't cause any permanent problem. If you're not driving, if you're not going to be in a crash, if you're not taking your medicine, you may be just fine. You just would not want to put yourself in a situation where if you had a seizure, you might die, like using a chainsaw while you're balancing on a limb up a tree. You might not want to do that. And speaking of that, people would act differently if they knew no doctor was around. Would you have your son play football if you knew there was no health system other than what you could provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it does change your perspective radically when there's no when there's no health services available. Yeah, how many different choices would you make? A lot, I'm sure.
Right. Yes, I wouldn't have let my son get that motorcycle that he did, but he was in a crash. But but he's okay. But he did break his femur, so it was a significant injury. But you just wouldn't do those things. What else do we do? Like chainsaws, for example. I've seen enough chainsaw accidents. You just might not want to do that. Hopefully people would be more careful. Or even a trampoline, fun things.
Yeah.
You can't live your life as an invalid, but you do have to think twice about certain things.
Well, and be a little more cautious. I mean, it's you can't always expect that those medical services are going to be available, and so you live a little more cautiously or a lot more cautiously. That makes perfect sense. So, yeah. And also, you talk about in your book your own level of health, your own level of strength. Like you asked the question, can you walk a mile with 2 jugs of water in your hands, 2 gallons of water? These are really, really good questions because water is so important, but if you got to walk a mile, can you walk a mile?
Yeah, you might want to try it. A couple days ago I twisted my knee, and I could barely walk for a few days. I only walked from one patient room to the other, and I did nothing else. And my daughter said, "Mom, go lie down." And it's hard for me to do that. I just hobbling around. But it's very useful to listen to your body. Your body says, rest. And so that's what you should do. And it helped a whole lot. It's way better. But I was thinking when I was hobbling around that, oh no, I couldn't do anything like this. In fact, it could have required surgery, but I'm better. But I see people who come in and they've wrenched their knee and they've torn their ACL ligament or something, and they require surgery. So, again, that'd be like a football. It could be a football injury, and you wouldn't want to do that. But it could come from other problems, too.
Well, because also what you're talking about is one thing when we're living with, the grid is working and we've got electricity, we've got everything up and running. But when that goes, whether it's from a hurricane or a tornado or an earthquake or whatever, then we have to be able to be fit enough to get our food, to get our water, to possibly have to walk long distances because we don't know if gas is going to be available. And
right.
And these are really important questions to raise for people who are not in shape, who are not in a situation right now where they're in good health. I mean, it is important, I think, to make really smart choices now because you don't know what's around the corner, and you do want to be able to walk that mile with 2 jugs of water in your hands if you have to, without a problem. But I know a lot of people can't do that. So,
right.
We've changed our culture so radically that we're just so spoiled in a lot of ways. We're so used to just picking up the phone and ordering a pizza or whatever, so that we don't even really know sometimes where our food's coming from. It just makes sense. A lot of the things in your book are just common sense, which I think we've lost a lot of that when it comes to our ability to stay in shape. We just have lost common sense.
And another thing you're talking about staying in shape, which is good, but getting old makes that tough, right?
It does, yes.
And
I can
what are you
attest to
going to do about your parents or your grandparents, or yourself, but parents or grandparents? I was carrying my grandson today, but not very far, and I was thinking, well, I could not. Maybe if the only choice was that I would carry him for a mile, I could do that. And 30 years ago, we have this fall hiking spree around Akron, and it's a series of 10 walks, and they're from 1 to 3 miles. And I took my kids on those, and I carried my kids, okay? But I was 20, 30 years younger, and I could not do that now, unless maybe I had supernatural strength. But you do just get weaker. And then my mother is 80, okay? She can't. I don't think she could walk a mile carrying any water. So you have to plan for whoever else is in your group. And like, when it's a typical, let's just say, survival group or consideration, it would probably be at least your family and maybe some friends and neighbors. And I know I cannot do the things physically that my 2 sons in their 20s can do. How could I? But I do have
someone here
smart.
has a suggestion that a backpack is a good idea.
And a backpack, yeah. So again, we're back to what would you do if there were a problem? Would you, quote, bug out, or would you bug in? Would you go somewhere or stay at home? Or stay near home? Well, I'm not going anywhere unless, I don't know, it's the only option. So I would be bugging in, okay? And I have my medical office in my house and a farm, okay? So that's good. But not everybody can do that. And if I were living in a city, like let's just say New York City, well, you have to think about it a different way. Maybe you'd want to bug out. My brother was in, I think it was Queens, around New York anyway, on 9/11, and he laughed. That sounded like a good idea, but he said it took him, I think it was 8 hours to get out of the city.
Oh, my goodness.
And he didn't have far to go. So you have to think, at least have to decide, am I going to stay put or am I going to go somewhere? Or could it go either way? And if you're going to bug out, you need a medical kit to take with you, which of course could be a lot smaller than if you're going to stay put. So, and I do have in my book a list of different medical kits and what you'd want for a small medical kit, and then one for your family, then maybe one for a community. It would really depends what you're looking at. The people who come to my classes are primarily thinking community, that they know, well, let's say the ones who've had a little medical training, like paramedics or EMTs, they know that people would turn to them if they're a medical problem, but they don't feel trained sufficiently. So they come to my classes to learn more because they already would be the go-to person for a medical problem. So for such a person, I would advise having a lot more on hand than if you're just thinking family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm sure that it increases your chance of survival also if you have a good, solid community around you, because, as you mentioned, then you have people like your two sons that could be called upon to do things that require strength and agility that maybe the older folks couldn't do. So it does make sense to reach out to your community as well during times like this, or even before the times get bad, so that you know who you can count on and there are some plans made. But one of the other things that I found interesting about your book is when you talk about the medical quarantine and isolation procedures. Mm-hmm. Can you share more about that?
Okay, well, quarantine and isolation are not really the same thing. In this country, we mostly do isolation, which is a person has a problem, let's just say a fever or vomiting or something. Anyway, they have a problem, and you want to isolate them from the rest of your group so everybody doesn't get sick. The other part of quarantine is where a person may have been exposed to something, but you don't know if they're not sick. They don't seem sick. Like a kid who's been exposed to chickenpox. Well, they might be going to get chickenpox, and maybe they're not going to get chickenpox. If such a person were coming to your group, they look fine, but you knew that they were exposed to chickenpox along the way, you'd want to quarantine them away from all your people for a period of time, at least a week. 2 weeks would be better, just to make sure they're really healthy. And then isolation is keeping people, you could say, in a sick room, or at least a room away from the healthy people. Of course, the sick people need to eat and drink and get medicine and take care, so you also have to be careful with the people going in and out of an isolated room. Just like in the hospital, everybody's seen that in the hospital, people with masks and gowns. Well, I don't think people are going to have masks and gowns mostly on hand. You can find to have those, but what makes most sense is if somebody's sick, to not touch them, not touch anything in the room, and wash your hands before you go in and before you come out, or as soon as you come after you come out. Depending on where the sink is. But most infections are spread more on the hands, and if you're 6 feet or farther from a person, most of the time you're not going to get sick, even if they cough.
That's interesting. 6 feet or further is a safety zone. Okay.
If you cough, I don't know if you've ever watched when you cough. I mean, we've all coughed and seen a little spray, but the droplets can go, on average, about 6 feet. So if you're across the room, you'll probably be okay. You have to be careful what you touch, too. Most of us get colds because we're touching something that somebody with a cold had touched, like a doorknob. In my own office, I do wash my hands a lot, but another thing I do is, at least during cold and flu season, I don't touch the doorknobs. I open them with my elbow, or try not to use my hand anyway.
And that's so even like in a large city or in a high rise.
What about
really
keeping,
tough in there.
Yeah, keeping those surgical gloves on hand. I mean, those plastic, latex, or whatever gloves. I mean, sometimes I even think of wearing them to the grocery store because you touch those carts, and even though they give you the antibacterial wipes if you want, I still don't trust it.
Yeah.
But when you talk about that, how germs are transmitted on door handles, and certainly grocery carts is another way.
Right, and that's true. But the other part of that is the immune system. So if you have a healthy immune system, the risk is not very high. And I often give the example of my dogs. I have these 2 golden doodles who will just drink water from anywhere. Okay, and it's not ideal, but let me just say they haven't gotten sick from it. So, and they're healthy too. You know, they're 5 years, 6 years old, and so they're healthy and pretty young, and they're not getting sick. Okay, well, I'm not suggesting people go drink from toilets, although in a pinch it'd be better than dying of dehydration. But to keep your immune system healthy, people, for example, who have COPD, who smoke, they do not have good immune systems. But they do have the power to change some of that.
Mm-hmm. How do you change that?
Well, we're back to living in eating healthy, for example. Of course, if you smoke, don't smoke. If you are not eating healthy, like say you just eat fast food all the time, that would not be getting you the vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and everything you need. So you could change your diet to largely fruits and vegetables. I was going to say that earlier. I was just reading a week or two ago about a recent study on treating high blood pressure with just eating fruits and vegetables. And the number you need is about 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And it will control blood pressure as well as medicine in a large number of people.
Wow, that's great news. So just doing that can make all the difference in the world, and you can get off your meds. That's great.
But how many people do you know eat 10 servings of fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, I could count them on one hand.
I don't. I'm pretty sure I get the 5 in, but 10 is a challenge. You have to not eat too much bread or pasta or the carbs. You just have to get it in fruits and vegetables, which is, what people would be doing in many societies. Like, again, in Africa or undeveloped countries, they don't have the amount of hypertension we have, and they're not eating like we're eating. And they're not eating the salt. If you just look at how much salt you just get in fruits and vegetables, it's really negligible, as opposed to
which in your book you talked about stocking salt because that's who would be deficient, right?
Right. And the salt that we have is mostly iodized salt. And I'm not sure exactly where you are, but if you're not near the seashore to get some seafood, where are you going to get your iodine from? Well, eventually maybe you'd have to get another answer, and I don't have the entire answer on this. I was looking up foods with high iodine content, but I don't think what I was reading was valid. So anyway, you can get enough iodine just from the Morton salt, typical salt. And salt is cheap. You could, stack 100 of those for $50. And that would
that's one of the things people should keep on hand then is salt.
Right, salt. And it's also good for oral rehydration solution, which the recipe's in the book, but basically it's water with a little bit of salt and some sugar. And one thing people don't really understand is that the body will absorb fluids better if there's a little bit of salt, a little bit of sugar in the water. Well, some understand it because that's Gatorade. That's Powerade.
Oh, my. I always wondered why that stuff tasted salty. There was actual salt in it. Okay.
There is, and I don't like it. I mean, not everybody can taste the salt in there, but I can.
I can too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but if did you ever drink Pedialyte?
It's not too tasty.
Yes. None of these electrolytes taste very good.
No.
But we probably should have them on hand, right? That's another thing to have on hand.
Right. But another way to think of it is you don't actually necessarily have to have it all in one solution. For example, you could have some of Grandma's chicken soup, which is salty, and some Kool-Aid, okay? So you get the salt here, you get the sugar there, and so you're still getting them both. But you mainly talk about oral rehydration solution in the situation where somebody's dehydrated, or in countries where they don't have Gatorade on every store shelf. But in my book, I start with the basics, which is water number one and food number two. You might even throw in there shelter as maybe number one, because you can die of hypothermia in a day. You could freeze to death under a bridge, and you're not going to die of dehydration in a day unless it's 100 degrees out.
There's a lot to consider. You're bringing up, again, just a tremendous amount of things we all need to think about, shelter and protection from the elements, but then also all of these other things that will keep us alive and hopefully healthy. There's a lot to this. So that's why your book is over 600 pages, right?
Yeah, and I'm impressed that you guys have actually read it. It takes a long time to read that book.
It was really easy to read, and it was really easy to look at the index and the table of contents and figure out what was most important to me personally or to anybody else who's looking at it. Yeah.
I tried to cram. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I tried to cram everything I could think of in a year into that book, and then I just had to publish it, or it was never going to get done. Of course, you could write more and more, but those are the things I see on a daily basis.
Well, this is a fascinating conversation, and we're going to take this opportunity to take a short break, and I hope that everyone stays tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Please call 646-478-0828 if you have a question for our guest, Dr. Cindy. We'll be right back.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Again with Dr. Cindy and her book, Armageddon Medicine, How to Be Your Own Doctor in 2012 and Beyond. A great read, a great reference book, and you can find that on Amazon.com. Is that correct, Cindy?
No, you have to go to my website, which is Armageddon Medicine.
ARMAGGEDONMedicine.com. Perfect. Thank you.
Is that .com or .net?
.com takes you to .net, so either one.
Okay, either one.
Right.
I did find you on Amazon, though, I have to tell you.
Did you?
I did. I found you right there.
Well, I could be there. I just did not hook the book up with them, at least not yet. I might someday. Also, on the website, not everybody wants to buy a book the first day. There's hundreds of articles there you can read on all sorts of topics. So you might want to just read through some of those articles and then decide. But, of course, I'd be happy for you to buy the book, not just for my benefit, but for yours as well.
I absolutely think that this is an essential thing for everybody's medicine chest. I mean, you need to have something like this. It's a great reference, and you need to have it. You need to have it on hand. I think everybody should have a copy of this book.
Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for writing this. Now, I have a question for you about fish antibiotics. Tell us about that.
Well, there's this little loophole in American antibiotic prescription law that allows antibiotics for fish aquariums to be sold over the counter without a prescription. Okay, so those are intended for sick fish. However, there are some people who've taken advantage of that loophole a little bit and have expanded on the thought, shall I say. I don't want to say too much about that, but I'm sure there are some websites that are selling, quote, fish antibiotics for humans. And I looked into it. In fact, I ordered some of these to see what they are. And the ones that I got were exactly the same as for humans, okay? And there is a way to tell. In certain countries like Mexico, you can get antibiotics over the counter. But in this country, you cannot, except for the fish antibiotics and some veterinary antibiotics. Anyway, if you wanted to look into fish antibiotics to know if they're safe, you're going to need to check out the pill itself. And pills, say you find a pink pill and it has a number on it, well, what in the world is that? Well, there are pill checkers online, for example, at drugs.com, a pill checker, and you can put in a description of the pill, like a pink capsule with the number 213 on it. Okay, it can cross-reference that to a database of pills, and it might tell you, for example, maybe it's amoxicillin. Okay, and it'll tell you what manufacturer made that as well. And then you could go to the manufacturer's website and see if they look legitimate. And also you could see if it says that their drugs are USP pharmaceutical rated and if they're AB rated generics. And if that's true, then those are just probably fine for humans to take. If you can't trace it back that way, I don't know if I would trust it. Things on the internet, how do you know what's true and what isn't true? But that is one way.
I've actually used that cross-reference to check on medications that come in a bottle and look different than they did the month before, and it's a great reference. Yeah. Right.
Or if you just find a pill in let's just say you go to somebody's house and they're unconscious and you have some pills just scattered and you wanted to look them up, you could do it that way. But you can also do it with antibiotics. And there are some places online where they will show you the pills before you order them. Again, this is what I would consider a loophole, and I don't know if the government's going to shut that loophole. I'm pretty sure that the fish in America are not all that sick. We're talking.
Well, my poor fish was sick, and I gave them the antibiotics some years ago, and it didn't help. So maybe I was giving them the wrong one. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Well, how many antibiotics do you need for the goldfish? I think probably not that much. Anyway.
But that's a very interesting loophole. And, again, because the antibiotics are so tightly regulated in this country, and it's you just can't get anything without a prescription. So this is an interesting loophole that if you wanted to stock up, then it is something that you can investigate further should you be so inclined. So it's very, I find it fascinating. It's the same stuff you give to your goldfish, the same stuff that you're getting from your pharmacy.
Yeah. Well, I do think a lot of those aren't going in the aquarium at all. And I have had people come to my seminars who've gotten a lot of fish antibiotics stocked up. It would be better to ask your doctor. I say this over and over. I say it in my classes. I say it all the time. It would be better to talk to your doctor to ask. For example, again, if I had a patient who is going to Africa and who said, I'm going to go there, I don't know what resources I'll have, I would like to have some antibiotics just in case, what would you suggest? And I would prescribe for those patients. And if I trust a patient, trust is a big deal. If I trust a patient, they'll keep extra supplies for certain indications and situations, I would prescribe them. But if I don't know the person and if I don't trust what they're going to do, then I'm not going to give them a year of medicine. Doctors are responsible for these things. I give you a medicine, I tell you there's some side effects, but there's a benefit, okay? And hopefully the benefit far outweighs the side effects. If I give it to you, I trust that you'll take it the way that I said, and I trust that you'll call me if there's a problem. But as you know, this country has big problems with pharmaceuticals, and not everybody does that. So
yeah, there's massive problems with pharmaceuticals in the way that they're being pitched to us, but also in the overuse, because there's been a lot of press about the overuse of antibiotics, and you even mention it too in your book that it produces a whole other set of problems. I mean, now we have C. diff that a lot of people are dealing with because of an overuse of antibiotics. Is that true, that it's from an overuse?
Well, the C. diff problem is at least partly from overuse. That's not the whole problem there, but the resistant infections, like the resistant staph infections, that is very largely from overuse of antibiotics. And it's not just antibiotics in humans; it's in the animals too. That the farmers are using them, and probably a lot larger numbers than the humans are. And it's also the belief that people have this belief in antibiotics. For example, in that book I devote, I think, like a chapter to strep throat. Should you treat strep throat? Well, nowadays we treat everybody with strep throat. And people think that they're taking the antibiotic so they'll get well. But that is not why they're taking the antibiotic. And there are studies done that show if you take the antibiotic, you get well about a day faster. Well, if you're sick for 4 days versus 5 days, does that matter a lot in the grand scheme of things? I asked that question to an infectious disease doctor, and he said, yeah, I think it matters. Well, he has to be at work every day, and it does matter, but, if you only have one round of antibiotics, who are you going to use it on?
See, but I'm going back to what I was told as a child. It's just like, well, you have to take the antibiotics because it can get worse, and it can turn into something else, and then that something else could be deadly. So, we've been sold a lot of press on antibiotics as preventing something worse.
Right, and partly that has to do with our understanding of antibiotics, because we certainly used to say that a lot more than we say it now, though there are certain situations when we use antibiotics to prevent a problem. That is true. But, patients would think automatically that all this stuff has been studied in great detail, when in fact it had not all been. There's a lot of focus on evidence-based medicine now, which is what is the evidence. For example, earaches. When I was a younger doctor, pretty much everybody who had otitis media or middle ear infection, they're all getting antibiotics. Well, nowadays, unless a child is pretty young and quite ill, they're not getting antibiotics, or at least antibiotics are not recommended, because it doesn't really help that much. Another good example is bronchitis in an otherwise healthy person. It's almost always a virus, and you don't need an antibiotic for that. Now, that's not everybody. If you have bad lungs and you're a smoker, for example, or you have asthma, or you've had pneumonia 10 times, there are exceptions. But for the average person who gets bronchitis, they don't need an antibiotic. But then what about what you just said? Okay, it might get worse. Maybe you go into pneumonia. Well, again, in an otherwise healthy person, that does not usually happen. In a sick, frail, older, diabetic person, yeah, that could happen. But in an otherwise healthy person, they don't need an antibiotic because it's a virus. But most doctors,
I'm going to take exception with the ear infection because I've been that route so many times, and I was really blessed with kids who didn't have chronic ear infections. But some years ago, they were in this mode of don't give antibiotics, and so I go in with the sick child, and his ear is inflamed. Yeah, but I've been up all night for 2 nights with this screaming child who I can't lay down, so there's clearly a problem. Well, no, go home. It's a cold. Take this little bit of the, cold medicine or whatever it is, and then I'm back in the doctor's office 2 days later with the same screaming sick child, and it's like, and they're still hesitant to give the antibiotics, you know.
And that, well, you might not realize that there's pressure on doctors not to give antibiotics in those situations.
Okay.
There are practice guidelines, which is the strict party line of medicine, and then there's the art of medicine, you know. If there's somebody who all the time this happens to, that would be a person to give an antibiotic to. But if a kid gets an ear infection twice a year and they're not, deadly ill, they don't need an antibiotic. But so there's a lot of gray area. It's not black and white.
Well, I know that doctors were told about, be careful how many antibiotics you prescribe, but I ran into difficulty with that kind of thing when they were little.
The other thing that you're telling me is a problem with modern medicine, which is people might like, in a situation like that, to have their child seen like every day for a few days because you'd like to know what the progress is. And the way we do medicine now is we give you a pill, see you in a week or a month or never. And I talk about that a lot in the diagnosis part of that book, in that you can reassess. It's very important to reassess. So if you're going to take care of an ear infection, you want to look at it with time. What does it look like on day 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 every day? Whereas
what they do is say, "Well, come back in a week." Yeah. Right. And then it's like I'm calling them in 2 days because it's not better. Not only is it not better, it's worse.
Right.
And, it is an art, I guess, is what you're trying to tell us. Because,
Well, that, but also in, let's just say, some of these Armageddon medicine scenarios where you're taking care of things yourself, I'm advising that you do reassess. Don't do it the way doctors do it, which is say, okay, I'll look at it now and in a week. Look at it every day so that you have some idea what's happening. And, again, on the antibiotics, my main point is if you don't have, a great stockpile of them and you don't know how long you'd be on your own, is it going to be 3 days? Is it going to be 6 months? You just want to reserve them for serious problems. And even your child with the earache, well, it is annoying and sometimes heartrending to have a child with an earache, but they're responding to the pressure build up in the ear even more than the infection. And once the pressure is built up to like its maximum, usually the pain will subside. It's stretching the eardrum. As it's being stretched, it hurts. But when it's already kind of stretched out, then it's not hurting so much. But there is definitely an art. So since we're talking about ear infections, one thing people might want to do is to get an otoscope, which you can get on Amazon, like Dr. Mom's otoscope is a good one. And it has an LED light that will last forever, more or less. The batteries won't last forever, but the light more or less will. And to start looking at people's ears. If you don't know what an ear looks like now, it's hard to recognize abnormal if you've never looked at any.
Yeah.
So you have little powwows of looking at ears. I haven't, in the prepper groups across the country, some of them are doing a lot of medical stuff, and they have these little training sessions periodically, so people can do things like that.
Well, it makes sense, because how else are you going to know what's normal? You know, you're looking at a child with an ear infection. What do you have to compare it to? So that you bring up, again, another great point of being able to experience normal through the otoscope or whatever else that you need as equipment to have these experiences, which you as a doctor have as part of your training, but we certainly don't in our everyday lives.
And that's true. And, of course, young doctors don't have it either. You build it up over time. And no doctor has seen everything, but after 30 years, I've seen an awful lot of the common things. There's still some uncommon ones.
Well, I'd like to turn your attention a little bit to the mental health aspect of a catastrophe. I mean, that was fascinating to me in your book, because people who already have mental health issues, that's already a problem or concern, something that has to be dealt with. But beside that, people who consider themselves, quote, normal or average, they seem to have a failure to cope when something really stressful comes along. And what do you recommend to keep people at peace or in alignment with their own positive thoughts and hope?
Yeah, well, if you think of all the possibilities that could exist, it gets overwhelming. So I would say to narrow your thoughts to the most likely scenarios to start with. I have a friend who does, she's a first responder down near Florida, and, you know, I've talked to her about how people act in a crisis, and they do what you say. She says they act like sheep.
Oh, really?
A lot of them. That is, they mostly are just following the leader or doing nothing. That they're just waiting for somebody to rescue them.
They withdraw.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 in 10, maybe that many, 1 in 10 will be proactive, but you have to count on 90% not being. So in the mental health issues, you know, partly you're asking, well, if you're normal and there's a great crisis, how are you going to respond? And then the other part is, if you already have a problem, what's going to happen, and what would you do about it? Or what will you do when all the people going to the community mental health center, if they couldn't go and get their medicine, then what's going to happen? But you can't. It's such a huge question. You can't take it all on at once. But so again, one part of it is practicing, thinking through these situations. What would you do if such and such? Now, for me, I think most crises wouldn't rattle me too bad, except for my kids getting hurt. That would be a difficult one. And my kids are grown now, so it's not quite so much. And who can think about their kids getting hurt? I just had a friend lose her son to a heart problem.
Oh, no.
And he was 24. I mean, so he should have been fine, but he died. Well, one thing that she does is she is willing to talk about things, way more than I am. Like when she's hurting, she will talk, and it really does help to have somebody you can talk to and confide in. It does not help to bottle it up. You have to talk about it. That's true for women and men. Women are more likely to talk about it. Men not, but they need to. So that's
I totally agree. Yeah, that's an important aspect of this that's often not even brought up, is the emotional wellness. And walking through any of these crises and surviving them is, obviously, we would all be under a tremendous amount of stress and wondering what's going to happen next. But certainly it would help, like you're saying, to bring out those feelings, share those feelings with each other in the small communities that we may find ourselves in. And don't, like you said, don't bottle up your feelings. Let them out. That's great advice.
And, medicines. A lot of people ask me for medicines for anxiety, grief, depression, things like that. Of course, if you ask your doctor for a bottle of Xanax, just in case the world blew up, they're probably not going to give it to you.
Right. Probably not.
So I'm not suggesting that you ask for that. But there are a few things you can do, say, with over-the-counter medicines that are important. Having gone through medical training, one of the most difficult things for me was the sleep deprivation. I just need my sleep, and so does everybody else, at least almost everybody else. And when there's a crisis, people tend to get a lot of sleep deprivation, which will only make things worse. So you might want to think about stocking some sort of over-the-counter medicine that makes you drowsy, like, say, Benadryl, so that you can sleep and get your rest so you can face the difficulties you might need to face.
That's a great point, yeah.
The over-the-counter medicines that say they're sleep aids, they all have either Benadryl or doxylamine. They have a sedating antihistamine in there. And the antihistamines are good for other things, too, like colds and runny noses and allergic reactions. So it's not like it would just go to waste. And they're cheap, too. So I'd have that on hand. And then there's another medicine that's very useful that I'd have on hand, which can be sedating but also help with anxiety somewhat, and that would be meclizine, which is a form of Dramamine or Bonine. It's really for nausea or car sickness, seasickness, but it has a side effect of being sedating, and it will help some people sleep. Most people have taken some sort of medicine that they say, oh, yeah, it just made me sleepy. Well, that could be useful, right?
Definitely. I mean, because as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, you're obviously you want to have your sleep so you can make reasonable decisions, and you're going to be in crisis mode in any of these disaster situations. So it's something that we probably never think about is how important it is to get your rest, even amidst chaos. It is important to get some sleep. Right.
And then I want to check the name of this book. I think it's The Survivors Club. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
I'm not sure if I have the name quite right. But it's a book that's talking about, who's going to survive. And one of the main points in that book is to think things through ahead of time. Okay, to say, okay, in this scenario, such and such might happen, and what would I do in that case? To not just wait until such an event arises, to think about it ahead of time. And we're just not used to thinking that way in this country, I don't think.
No, I don't think we are. Yes.
Makes you wonder how those people in Syria cope. What are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they're doing, or in the countries where there's famine or there's wars or whatever there is. And they don't have Xanax and Ativan and Valium and Prozac and all that other stuff. One thing I think they have that we lack to some degree is a sense of community, that we all want our own house. We all want to have, our own car, our own kids. It's just us in this house, and that is not going to work if things go bad.
Mm-hmm. No, it is one of the things that I've seen on these prepper shows over and over again, that people get marked down for basically not having a community around them, and they get points for having a community that they've developed of people with different kinds of skills. So, yeah, your point is well taken with all of us, all of this, and we are used to isolating ourselves and just thinking about our own immediate family and our own immediate needs. But certainly, if things go bad, then we have to reorganize our thinking and develop different plans. But I'm also very intrigued by what you shared with your friend who's a first responder in Florida, who felt that 90%, that's a very high percentage, 90% of the people would react like sheep. So they're not willing to think for themselves. They're not willing to go out and buy your book and get ready. It's, that's a little scary. 90% is a lot of people that aren't paying attention and don't want to.
Well, if you think of the number of people in this country who are, let's say, doing anything to get, say, prepared, let's just say for a month, I would say the number is under 10%.
Really?
On the other hand, 10% out of 300 million is 30 million people. So, so that's a lot. But I talk to people all the time about this, and of course, the people who come to my classes, they are with groups, and so they're have a little network. But they'll also tell me, well, my family thinks I'm crazy, or my kids don't have time for this, or whatever. So do you think that more than 10% of the country is doing something to be prepared?
No, I don't.
I don't know. I think my vision is really skewed because I talk to so many people every month, and virtually all the people I talk to are well aware of this and have done something.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just because I'm a little bit involved, and that's the view I'm getting. But I'm a little shocked to hear that it's less than 10%.
Yeah, I believe that I believe that's accurate, because as I think about this, most of the people that I know that even are aware of how things can go bad quickly, they're not prepared. They don't have 6 months worth of food, then 6 months worth of water, and 6 months worth of medical supplies. But you know what, Patricia, there's a fine line. I feel like if I'm prepared for 6 months and I'm not getting skinnier, then the people in my congested area are going to come after me. So where's the line on how far you go to prepare in a crowded environment? Well, and again, this is part of what they talk about on the prepper shows, is then you're talking about what are you willing to do for security and, that type of defense, what are you willing to do there? That's another aspect of this. I mean, the medical aspect is important. Food and water, shelter are all important, but then it's security. How do you protect the supplies that you have? So it's this is not a simple issue. It's something that, as you've said, Dr. Koelker, that it is something that people need to think about ahead of time. And it's not like it hasn't happened already. It has. Katrina, Sandy. There have been earthquakes in other parts of the world that have been devastating. I mean, look at Japan. It has happened. And so it's not like it's, we didn't have any thought that this could ever happen. It has happened.
Yeah, and
it has happened, but some people have a fatalist attitude about it. In other words, if Sandy comes up to my house, if a hurricane like that comes to my house, what's going to be left to grab as supplies?
Yeah.
I mean, some people have that sort of fatal outlook of, well, if the tornadoes come down, all my supplies are gone anyway.
Well, I have some friends who live on a farm. They're developing a community there, and they make an excellent point, which is you should perhaps be living now how you might live then. Well, they have a farm, and so they're doing that. But the time to learn some of this is now, while you have the opportunity to learn, and you can look up anything you want on the internet. And so they're already practicing it. And I am not as far along in some of the stuff as some of my friends are. And when I have people come to my classes, I routinely ask, well, how many of you have food for 3 months, 6 months, a year? And of the people who come to my classes, an awful lot of them are prepared for a year. And I'm glad to see that some people are.
That's excellent.
It takes some effort to do that.
It really does. But I would imagine that they have a sense. I mean, they've got to have a sense of pride in what they're doing too. That an accomplishment. I mean, when I see people who have shelves of canned food and they have their paper products, or they have just a whole room that's set up for this, I'm impressed. I mean, it's like I know what you're saying. It does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of forethought.
We're also, let's say, a generation or two away from that's what everybody used to do. My grandma died not too long ago at 93. I still remember as a kid, teenager, going over and helping her can, because that's what they did, And it used to be the normal thing to have enough food to go through winter, right? Because you knew no more was coming.
Right.
And now it's sometimes considered hoarding, when before it was just the way everybody lived. Here's an interesting fact. I had my lawyer sister look this up for the last class, if there were any laws about hoarding food, that you couldn't do that. And the only state that she found where there were laws about that was Hawaii, which seems like they should have laws that you must hoard food.
Yeah. So it's illegal to hoard food in Hawaii.
Yeah, they had I think it was a week. I'm not sure if that's quite right, that you're not allowed to have more than a week of food. How could you monitor that anyway? But
I know. Really? That's crazy. How funny is that?
Yeah. So here in Ohio,
what was the reasoning on that?
I don't know. She didn't find that. She just found a law about it. So at least that part's good. Well, another point of my book is to take away the fear factor, because I am not out there preaching doom and gloom. I'm out there preaching you can help yourself.
And that's a big difference. Yeah, that's a really big difference.
Yeah, and it made me start thinking recently that health classes in high schools should be different. I don't even know exactly what they teach anymore. They teach, reproductive facts, let me say that, and systems. This is a respiratory system or whatever they teach. When maybe they ought to be teaching how to take care of yourself if you really have to. I've had a few teenagers come to my classes who are interested, and they do great. They can learn. They can certainly learn to suture people. They can certainly learn to splint and to cast. And I also teach the labs, common labs that are done in doctors' offices that you could do. It surprised me to find how many of these you can just buy over the counter. Like if you go to Amazon, you can get strep kits, the same exact ones that doctors use.
No kidding. So you can test yourself for that, or a family member. Yes,
you could. You do need to know that you need to get back clear to where the tonsils are and take a swab there, not just off the tongue. But the directions come with them, too. So, the pregnancy kits, those were probably the first one over the counter. And then the ovulation kits, those came. And so the strep kits you can get. And, of course, people know about getting blood sugar kits and urine testing strips. Well, most people don't know about that. You can get the same urine testing strips that doctors use over the counter. And there's an influenza test, mono tests. Anyway, you can get these things if you're motivated to do so. The one that I would suggest people get if they have kids is the strep test. I'm not sure how most doctors would react if you said, I did my own strep test at home.
Probably wouldn't be very pleased.
I don't know. How would your doctors react? Any idea?
I would get a disapproving look, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They would tell me you have to bring them in,
Yeah.
To just discount it,
Yeah. Well, in spite of all that, people can learn a lot of this. I'm treading a fine line between organized medicine, and I'm a member of societies, and I have licenses and things like that, and I know the way to do things, so you don't get in trouble. But I think people need to know more than that, how to take care of themselves in situations that they might be surprised to find themselves in.
Well, I think that's absolutely the way to live. I know that most people who get a lot out of their healthcare provider, they consider their healthcare provider as a partner to them, not somebody who's going to make them better or give them a magic pill. It's a partnership where you're going to somebody who's a physician, and they should be working with you, informing you, and also, getting the information to get the right diagnosis, the right treatment, et cetera. I think, in my mind at least, it's a thing of the past to just turn your life over to your doctor and say, make me better. But I know a lot of people still do it. So
yeah,
that is a generational people do
thing.
It, but it might be. But I've found that among doctors, there's a wide variety that want to listen to the patient. There's a wide variation in how many want to listen. If I go in and say, well, I looked this medication up on the internet and I didn't like what I found. Mm-hmm. Some doctors react favorably to that, and others get very angry. They don't want you to be self-empowered.
The doctor's ego shouldn't get in the way. But it is a generational thing. I have a lot of older patients because I've been in the same place for a long time, and the older patients think, you're the doctor, you tell me what I should do. Now let me contrast to two other patients I saw this week who are both in their 20s. They both brought me pictures on their iPhones of one of his foot and another of a bowel movement, which was both But it was very helpful, in fact.
Well, see, they were participating in their own health care. Good for them.
But so that's the difference between the 20-year-old and a 70-year-old. And then the people in between, it depends on their computer savviness. But the partnership word, I love that word. I wish there were more of it. And we're aiming to get more of it. One problem with that to some degree is it is more time-consuming. And the medical establishment needs to allow more time with the doctors. And the way I often say it is, a doctor may know what's wrong in 10 minutes, but the patient doesn't understand it in 10 minutes. It could, and you could also miss something, or a patient might not tell you something because they just thought it wasn't relevant, or they thought you didn't have time, or didn't want to hear it, or whatever. So, especially people with chronic problems, it really takes a relationship to handle those in the best manner. It helps a lot to see the same doctor repeatedly, although sometimes it helps to get outside opinions too, because no one doctor knows it all, and to get
people shouldn't be afraid to go and talk to other doctors or seek other knowledge about especially chronic condition, because there's very little often that can be done traditionally with chronic conditions. So, you always have to think outside the box with things like that, in my opinion. I mean, I have an autoimmune disease, so I know what that's like, going into the doctor and saying, look, this is what I just researched, because I know he's not doing it. He doesn't have the time. And so I bring in all this paperwork, and I ask him to read it, and hopefully he does. But it's, it is one of those time constraint issues. It's also, I think, a lot of things are mandated by insurance companies that never used to be before. So we're up against that constraint as well.
Yes, I was just talking, let me put this in my brain for a minute, somebody who's had a friend in the hospital, I can't think who it is, but the nurses, he said he was keeping track of how much time they spent with the patient versus with the paperwork. And his estimate was, I think, 90% of time with the paperwork. Now that's ridiculous. We've gotten to the point now that the paperwork is everything. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. And this is supposed to help the patients, but it just does not always really help. It's information overload too. I get letters now. It used to be a letter that was like one page. Well, now it's 3 or 4 pages, and to find what you're actually even looking for is hard because the computers can just generate this large amount of repetitive information.
And is this from insurance companies that you're getting these letters, or who's this from?
Well, that would be, say, from referral doctors.
Okay.
Say somebody goes to see the cardiologist. It used to be a one-page thing. This patient has this problem. We need to do this. Now it's 4 pages of, I could use the word gobbledygook, but it's just excess information that obscures some of the most important information at times.
So it's not even helpful. Well, we have a question for you from the chat room from Deborah.
Okay.
And she would like to know, and we're going to go back, actually this is taking us right back to the beginning of the show when you started talking about this. Are any governmental agencies even thinking about taking the initiative to prepare their citizens even after Katrina and Sandy?
Well, I would say I know they have stockpiles throughout the country of antibiotics and IV supplies, things like that. I don't know where they're stored. I know there are facilities. I would hope that the mayor of my city knows where such things are, but I don't know that he does. So that's a governmental level of preparation. I mean, you probably believe that there are stockpiles of that. But as far as getting the individuals themselves to prepare, I haven't seen any of it. Have you?
I have.
No.
I've seen lots of public service announcements about being prepared, and sometimes we get stuff in the mail from the town saying a very short list of emergency supplies to have on hand, like first aid kit, batteries, and water, that kind of thing. It's very, it tries to get your attention, but it's so insignificant compared to what's really necessary. But I have seen a lot of that over the past several years.
And I haven't seen any change in consciousness about this on a town level. I mean, what I see is people are just so interested in how they can raise our property taxes or how they're going to have planning board regulations enacted or things like that, which to me doesn't make any sense because of what we're facing in the world today. It would make a lot more sense if they took all of that time and energy and put it into preparedness for each community. But that's not what I see them doing. I just see business as usual, and like I said, how are they going to generate more revenue for the town? How are they going to get more for their property taxes in these towns when the home values are going down? And that's where I'm seeing the focus. It's totally in the wrong place, in my opinion.
And they basically just don't believe anything ever really will happen. And it certainly can be that nothing happens in my lifetime. And some of what I'm doing, I said for my kids and grandkids. But I don't foresee that America can keep up with the financial ways of doing things. Certainly if I were in debt like that, they would take what I have eventually, wouldn't they?
Oh, sure they would.
How can the government do it? Yeah.
They can carry it out on their shoulders and be dancing. But yes, it is, and it concerns me greatly, especially the financial crisis that's been looming overhead, like the sword of Damocles for some time.
Yeah.
And that's just one place where this collapse could come from. Just one. There's many more.
There are, and it's hard to imagine that Yellowstone's going to explode in our lifetime, or I could imagine more easily that there could be an electromagnetic pulse. I could imagine that could happen.
Oh, yeah.
I remember having drills in grade school where, we'd get under our desk and put our head over the back of our hand over the back of our head, as if that would do any good.
I know.
But that was not that long after the end. That was like, say, 1960. So that was not that long after the end of the Second World War. When clearly lots of bad things did happen in much of the world, and so people believed that something could happen. And now you just think, well, America, our military, strong, nothing could happen here. I don't know if that's the case.
It just seems that people go into denial. They don't want to just, I guess, assess things logically and then make plans from there. We want to continue to live the lifestyle that we've been living, and we don't want anything to interrupt that. And I certainly understand that. Things are pretty easy for us here in the United States, and not so much in some other countries. But I think people have to sober up. People have to really look at what can happen. And this is just my opinion, and I think this is why I love your book, and I think everybody should have a copy, because then we are increasing our knowledge base. And like you said in your dedication, you hope your children, your grandchildren never, ever have to use this information. But I think it just makes sense. It's logical. Get prepared, just in case. Just in case there's a hurricane, just in case there's a tornado, just in case there's an earthquake that affects you where you live, then you're prepared.
And it's just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, it's really an empowering feeling to know that you'll be okay without having to worry minute one or be caught like a deer in headlights. That, it really does give us some hope and some power when we are able to be totally prepared and know that we can take care of ourselves at the moment.
Well, It is a fine line to walk between being in this world and being in that world. You all are kind of in the same world I am, thinking about these things all the time. But it can also, let's not say make you sick, but it can.
I've talked to some people who've gotten sick over it, honestly.
Yeah.
They get so immersed in the impending doom, let's say, without getting into all the subjects around it, that they actually become obsessive about those thoughts, and they lose the joy in their life. And we don't want anyone to let their life pass them by without being joyful.
No.
So it's a fine balance.
Yeah, and also, again, a lot of the people that I've seen that are preparing, there is, and this is the point I was trying to make earlier, there is joy in what they're doing, because there's this incredible sense of accomplishment. They get super organized in their lives where they may not have been before, and it's wonderful to watch this transformation from one place to another of becoming informed, getting prepared, and having wonderful food that they can themselves. It's great. I would love to be able to have the energy to can for myself. But usually at the end of the gardening year, I'm so tired from all the gardening, doing the canning just feels like, oh my goodness, please don't ask me to do another thing. But it is, of course, that's where you benefit, is if you can take the time and energy. And I know people who do canning parties and have people over, and it becomes a social event. It's joyful. Exactly what you're talking about, Helene. It's joyful.
And as part of that, I have thought this year, now could I grow enough food? I have the room, but could I grow enough food to just eat for a family of 4? And that is a lot of labor. I need my sons to help with that, I would say.
Yeah.
But you could do it for a day. You could say, today I'm only eating what I've grown or what I can glean, or something like that. And then you could work toward it, and it could be fun, too. I think kids could have a good time with that.
It does put you also, I think, much more in touch with nature and your surroundings when you are working with a garden. You really get the sense of how reliant you are on Mother Nature to do the things that you hope that she'll do throughout the growing season. So it's wonderful, I think, especially for children, to grow up with that, to learn about that connection and how important it is.
And speaking of growing things, let me throw this out there about herbal medicines. Certainly, it could come to needing herbal medicines, okay? And maybe we should have a talk about that sometime. But I'm not talking about going online and finding whatever it is and ordering it from China. That doesn't make any sense to me, unless you want to just do that. But say if you're looking at some sort of survival mode, what makes sense to me is to start by looking around where you live and finding things you can use. For example, I have a maple tree. It's not a sugar maple, so I didn't know that you can tap maple trees that are not sugar maples. You can tap any maple tree for maple syrup. Just the sugar content is lower.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Well, that's good information.
And you can also tap walnut trees. But on a medical standpoint, okay, so this is like around here mid-February to mid-March. Another thing it would be is a potential source of oral rehydration solution again. That is, you don't have to boil it down. You can just drink it the way it is. And it has a little bit of sugar in there, and it could be used as a dietary supplement. So that's my maple trees. Another thing is, before you call something just a weed, think that it might be something else. I never paid attention to all the mullein growing around this area, but it's all over the place. And I've learned a lot about mullein this year, just about how it's growing, but I haven't really used it in medicine. But it has been used for respiratory conditions a lot. And wherever you are, there's weeds and things growing, so you can find some of these things. It's not like using penicillin for a pneumonia in the hospital, but I believe God has given us things to help us besides what you find in a drugstore.
Absolutely. I agree with that, and I know, Helene, you do too. In fact, years ago, a Native American medicine person told me that whatever you need for your medicine is usually growing within a certain distance of your location. So, and here I am on a property that has tons of mullein, and I love that. It is great for lung conditions. I know that for a fact. And milk thistle, good for liver issues, and just so many other things. Reishi mushrooms grow wild here. They call that the king of healers. So it is, and it's all right here. And I'm lucky enough, again, to live in the country, so I'm going to have access to more of these things. But as you've suggested, it's so important to get knowledgeable about them so I can recognize them. I know now what mullein looks like. I know what milk thistle looks like. I know I have to wear gloves when I pull it out because it's got wicked thorns on it. So,
yeah,
so these are the things you learn. And so if things go bad, or even if they don't, if you just want to experiment now with these things, you have that opportunity.
Yes, and if so we have winter coming up. You can, if you don't have time to harvest them now, you could still order them online and just see. You can get mullein powder or something online. You could just try it out, and one day use a mullein, and the next day use a Sudafed. Or they say mullein is not a decongestant; it's an expectorant. Okay, so use mullein one day, and use guafenicin or Robitussin the next day, and compare. Does it make a difference? A study came out a couple of years ago that honey works better than Robitussin for cough in kids. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So
really,
of course, who funds those studies? I don't know who funded that one, but it's hard to get the money to do these studies. So you just have to do it on your own. But that would be a great way to see, does mullein really help that much? Or if you're asthmatic, try it out. It's better to know now than later. And then also you want to know, well, is it the root? Is it the leaf? Is it the flower? Is it in the fall? Is it in the winter? Or when is it? An awful lot of our medicines have come from plants.
That's true, and they're very effective. And just like you're saying, I think we are finding out more and more how effective these plants are, even right up against these drugs, that sometimes they outpace them, like honey, with the study against Robitussin, that honey was more effective. So there you go. And again, you know better than anybody, being a physician, the power of these pharmaceutical companies. So I'm surprised that anybody ever heard about the honey study.
Yeah. Well, there are more and more articles. I'm part of the American Academy of Family Physicians, and they have articles on herbal medicine periodically because there is more interest in it, and people want to know, and people have a right to know. It's not just what the doctors tell you; it's what you want to know yourself.
Well, I'm all in favor of that. I think we need to be our own physicians, and certainly your book, Armageddon Medicine, is a book to have in every household.
Well, thank you for that, and I hope you never need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Although it's something that you could use now anyway, because it's very practical. It's aimed at things that people see all the time, and it's not really just for if the world's coming to an end.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's also, like I said, I think people who live out in rural areas where it's difficult to get an ambulance or something there in a certain period of time, this particular book, Armageddon Medicine, is something that, again, will give you a sense of security and a sense of that things are going to be okay. And, I mean, just even talking with you tonight, I felt a sense of relief knowing that if somebody has strep throat, they're not necessarily going to die from it if they don't get antibiotics.
Right.
So
that's worth knowing.
Yeah, so it's great information to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, glad you like that little tidbit.
I love all your tidbits here. They're just so helpful. And, again, because for so long, medicine has been the purview, it's been owned by physicians and the AMA, and we've been kind of kept out. And instead of us being just subjects, we do need to be partners, and I'm glad you like that word, because that's the only way I see medicine being effective, really.
I think a lot of women physicians are more prone to have the partner concept too. That might not be true. I have not done a study of it. It's just just the people I know. Let's put it that way.
That works.
A little more nurturing, shall I say. They do teach in medical school to be objective, but if you've seen the same patient for 20 years, you got to have some degree of a personal relationship there.
That's right. You'd hope. I'd hope, anyways, for that.
Yes.
Well, we are so honored that you chose to spend your time with us, and we really appreciate it. And it's been just a fascinating discussion, one that is really, really important for people to hear. And Armageddon Medicine, your book, is at your website, ARMAGGEDONMedicine.com, and they can order it there. And we are just honored and thrilled. This was just great, wasn't it, Patricia?
This has been great, and I can't thank you enough. I know how busy you are, and we've been asking you to come on the show for months and months, and so thank you for making the time this evening. It's just been a wonderful discussion, and I know our audience is going to be very pleased with us because you're here tonight, and I know everybody's going to want a copy of this book. It is important to get a copy of Armageddon Medicine, How to Become Your Own Doctor in 2012 and beyond. So this is an important book to have.
Well, thanks for having me. I think it's been fun.
Well, good. Well, we hope you come back because I know you have another book, 101 Ways to Save Money on Your Health Care, and that I know is a whole other topic and a whole other discussion, but that's another thing we'd love to talk to you about.
Okay.
So we'll have to plan for that and work it in with your busy schedule. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Koelker.
Okay, you're very welcome.
What a wonderful show this has been, hasn't it, Patricia?
Well, I love doing these health shows at least once a month because, we do the paranormal stuff and we both love that. And we've had some incredible guests, top-notch people from all over the world. But, health is a big issue today. I mean, things have changed in the society and the way that we handle our health and our medical care. And having somebody like Doc Cindy on tonight who's so empowering is a great thing for everybody in our audience. So I'm glad we're doing these shows like this.
It is. The whole health care issue is related to spirituality because the more we feel in control of our lives and ourselves, the better we feel, the better we're able to cope with anything that comes along.
That's right. That's right. We need to be on our toes here with all of these things. So this has been great. And I want to thank everybody who joined us tonight and asked these great questions. And please go to supernaturalgirls.com, sign up for the newsletter. As Helene mentioned, we are going to be having even more giveaways and promotions. And we have a new store where we have a beautiful prayer recited by Becky Andreasen, who is one of the very few people in the world, if not the only person in the world, who speaks in the ancient angelic language. And it's a beautiful, beautiful prosperity prayer, the first in a series. So please go to the store, which you will find the link on supernaturalgirls.com, and read all about Becky and this prosperity prayer, and buy it.
It is amazing. It is amazing and powerful.
It is amazing. We know that, and it's powerful. So we only have things like that in our store. This is the very first product, and we're honored to have Becky involved with us with this particular project.
Well, it's been another great night, Patricia.
I know it. It went too fast.
It did. It went by in a blink. But we'll be back next Saturday night with another exciting guest, and we hope that you all stay tuned and join us. Good night, Patricia.
Good night, Helene, and good night to everybody in our audience. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with